Well, this movie is typical of the MCU, that is. At this point, I have stopped expecting introspective looks into the minds of comic book characters, and now I expect action to be put first and plot to be put 15th. If you want a movie that you can turn your brain off completely for, and you just want to see what happens next in Marvel, then this is a movie for you. If you care about story, character development, themes deeper than the power of friendship, and things of that nature, then this is the video for you. We begin with Janet seeing a crash. She then gets ambushed by these weird little monster things and gets saved by Jonathan Majors. This scene somewhat hurts the impact of who the Conqueror is, but whatever. It would have been nice to not see him and hear his name over and over until the reveal later on to build a lot more tension, but hey, we had to have the scene of Janet almost dying, right? It's not like we could cut it out completely or anything. We then cut to San Francisco. I really appreciate the realism of the setting. Scott walks around and is clearly a celebrity recognized by everyone, but isn't swarmed instantly because, I don't know. Scott only wants to be a dad and clearly is trying to put the troubles of Thanos behind him. Hope is apparently saving the world using PIM particles for reforestation, affordable housing, and world hunger. The housing thing is understandable given how you could cut smaller portions of lumber and then grow them. That part's fine. But how can you grow more forests with growing and shrinking powers? If you take a foot-long sub and then grow it to 10 feet, do the calories increase to the amount that would be there if it were a normal 10-foot sub? Scott's daughter gets arrested, and it turns out she was attacking cops because they were using tear gas at peaceful protests. Inserting your own politics into a movie is fine, as long as you don't wave it in front of the audience's face. I get that they had the scene to show that Cassie wants to help people, but why not have her work at a homeless shelter? If you wanted to add the whole cops are bad thing, you could just add a cop coming in, assuming she's homeless, and then treating her like trash. You get the same effect, but Cassie becomes completely innocent. Oddly enough, Hope takes her side on the ride home from jail and gives Scott more grief for listening to his own book. At family dinner, it turns out that Cassie has been to jail multiple times. Scott is obviously surprised by this, and then the family chooses to pile on Scott. Cassie says, well, at least we're trying to do something that matters. Keep in mind that the only reason that any of these people are alive is partially due to Scott. Why is Cassie acting like this? It turns out that while Hank has been working with super genius ants, don't worry, we'll get to that later, Cassie studies the quantum realm and has created a subatomic telescope. She says that the telescope will help them explore the quantum realm without going into it. Keep that in the back of your mind for later. Janet then freaks out and turns off the telescope. The telescope then malfunctions, sucking Hank and Janet in, so Hope goes after them. Good thing she brought her suit to family dinner. This isn't really a big complaint for me. It's feasible that she just has it on her all the time, but it seems a little weird. Cassie also gets sucked in, so Scott goes after her. Cassie then asks where they are. Where do you think, Cassie? The quantum realm telescope just sucked you in. Clearly she is a genius. Janet, Hank, and Hope land in a set piece from Wreck-It Ralph. Janet seems to have a handle on things, but won't tell anyone what she knows. Cassie freaks out, which is funny given how she spends the rest of the movie and up to this point acting like she knows more about superheroing than Scott. I don't know if superheroing is a word, but it fits. Scott tries to calm her down, and then they get chased away by a behemoth. It turns out that there are people living in the quantum realm, which would be a little bit more impactful if we hadn't seen a guy land here earlier on. Janet knows a lot about this place, and despite knowing who Kang is and how dangerous he is, Janet keeps refusing to talk. Does she not realize how much better of a chance they will have against this apparently multiversal threat? If she gives her family this info, they could really be more prepared for the inevitable fight better than they were. Scott and Cassie get captured by these people who definitely shouldn't be able to beat them. I understand that they easily beat this behemoth thing that Scott and Cassie were running away from, but I think that the two of them, if they had to, could have beaten it. These people are clearly inferior to the two of them, and we see this in every combat scene that they are involved in from here on out. The survivor people bring Ooze over to Scott, who is scared but doesn't use his powers for some reason. I have no clue why he's doing this. His powers still work, when they need to at least. It turns out that the ooze is a translator, which is a nice way to get rid of a language gap in this setting, so I'm fine with it. Chidi from The Good Place shows up. He's a psychic and doesn't really play that big of a role in this movie, but I like the first couple seasons of The Good Place, so I wanted to bring him up. They talk about how he, quote unquote, will hunt the people from above, aka the earth. He is the conqueror. I wonder who they're talking about. Maybe it was the guy they showed in the first scene. Hope's family goes into a bar to meet with Janet's contact. We cut to Scott saying, "We just want to go home," and Gintaria, who's the leader of the survivors, says, "At least you have a home." Why is that your response? He's not bragging about how nice San Francisco is. He's saying that he doesn't want to disturb you and just wants to go back. If you can't help, just say that. Cassie then gets mad at Scott for not wanting to help and says just because it's not happening to you doesn't mean that it's not happening. I get the meta messaging that they're trying to insert here. There are people that aren't in your personal bubble that struggle, but it makes no sense here. It's already been stated that the Conqueror is after the two of them, and we see later on that a lot of death gets caused because they hung around. If they had just left and looked for a way out, a lot less people would have died. Also, Scott just risked his life to save trillions like a couple of months ago. He clearly knows that there are people everywhere hurting. The survivors know Janet, who apparently abandoned them in the quantum realm. Back at the bar, Bill Murray, who was Janet's contact, says that the hunter, quote unquote, is coming. The family makes an escape by stealing Bill's ship, and Hope stays on the ramp to kill more people right out in the open. She's not really the bloodthirsty type, so I have no clue why she did this. The soldiers come to the survivors' hideout, and Gintoria blames Scott and Cassie for letting them in. You captured them and chose to bring them in. You did not at all regard the risks of doing that until they had been there for a while, knowing that Kang was after them. This is your fault, don't blame them. Gintoria tries to hold off the soldiers to let the rest of the survivors escape, and as she slowly gets overwhelmed, Cassie runs to save her. You are actively defeating the whole purpose, Cassie. Gintoria gets captured anyway, and the only real narrative point of Cassie trying to save her is for the writers to hit the action scene quota. Scott tries to give advice to Cassie, and she isn't receptive, which is dumb. He's been doing this for years. You've been doing it for at most a year or two, if we're being really generous. MODOK shows up and starts killing people. He looks odd. I found his design funny, and this is the only point in the movie where I genuinely laughed. I know people have been excusing how dumb MODOK looks by saying he looks dumb in the comics, which isn't really a defense. I agree that he looks dumb in the comics. He always looks dumb. That doesn't excuse how remarkably stupid he looks here. If you like him looking dumb, then fine, but we should be able to expect better if there is something bad in the source material. He looks like he would be in a Spy Kids movie. Scott and Cassie get captured and brought to Kang, and we see the infamous MODOK building scene. The freeze frame of his butt cheeks is all over Twitter, so I'm not even going to harp on it. It just doesn't look very good. And Janet, after all this time, finally explains what's going on. When Kang crashed, his ship battery lost complete charge, so they work together talking about how they could fix it. Once they fix the ship, Janet touches the ship and, in the present, says, the ship was neurokinetic, connected to his mind. This line is Big Bang Theory tier, and I really don't like it. Why not just say it was connected to his mind? It will feel a lot more natural than it did in the movie. Obviously, this is a nitpick, but still, it just feels so off. The ship shows Janet all that Kang has done, and she sees that Kang didn't crash, he was exiled. The two of them then fight, and Janet uses pin particles to grow the ship's core. Janet then left the quantum realm after fighting Kang because she just wanted to be a mom. Back with Scott and Kang, Scott claims that he's an Avenger and has called the other Avengers. Why lie here? This type of lie never works, and you're not going to make him set you free. If anything, you'll make him increase security, which makes it a lot harder for you to escape. Kang then claims to have killed Thor and many other Avengers. The purpose here being to instill that Kang is a real threat and not to be messed with. Keep that in mind. Kang says he knows how it ends, all of it, and he wants to be there for it. Kang then threatens Cassie's life to make Scott shrink the core for him. Once Scott jumps into the core, Scott duplicates because he is in a probability storm, a cat in Schrodinger's box. The copies all think that they are the real Scott and run around frightened, and MODOK says that they are every decision he can make all at once. If that were the case, you would think one of the copies would instantly make the right decision and the core would have already shrunk, but hey, why think about the things that movies tell you, right? Scott then somehow tames all of them. I have no clue how that's happening. Again, they are every possible choice all at once. They are not different versions, they are individual manifestations of decisions. Scott overcomes all of this with the power of love and has the copies lift him up to the center of the core. Scott gets close but falls. Hope catches Scott, and Scott asks if she's real. She says that she is. Now, remember that I said that the copies all think that they're real? Why would this possible Hope copy be different in any way? Of course she said yes. It's a good thing that she actually was real, or Scott probably would have died here. Hope then helps shrink the core. Why is she doing that? She knows that the core is what Kang needs, and she doesn't know that Kang has Cassie. After the core is shrunk down, Kang goes after Cassie and Scott, while MODOK confronts Hank. Kang beats Cassie and Scott easily and just takes the core. While doing this, he shows off telekinetic powers that he will never use again. MODOK crashes Hank's ship, and we see it fall opposite to the way that Kang's fell. I like how they're trying to show the thematic contrast between Hank and Kang. It's a little on the nose, but whatever. Kang freezes Janet and takes her with him while leaving Scott and Cassie alive. Why he does that, I do not know. There is no real benefit to him doing this, and seeing someone who has been pretty calculating up to this point do something for literally no reason really undercuts his character. It's a good thing that Kang didn't just kill the three of them here, or the rest of the movie doesn't happen. Once back at his base, Kang talks to Janet, telling her that he and his variants broke time. Hank randomly shows up with the super genius ants who also got sucked into the quantum realm and were calling out to him. It turns out that the ants did the whole Flaxen / Rick and Morty time dilation thing and have become pretty advanced. It's a good thing that they progressed so much, or the ending might have been a lot different. Hank compliments the ants instilling socialism. I know that Young Ripper and Reaper were mad about this, and I understand that, but I really don't mind messaging like this in movies. It can be a little annoying, but obviously I just made a video praising Joker, and I use Fight Club in most of my videos. This here is just way too conspicuous, and it makes people instantly disregard any type of message you may have. You might as well just have the writer come onto the screen, sit down in a chair, and talk about why they like socialism for 5 minutes. It's pretty much the same level of delivery. Apparently Kang also let Gintaria live and has her locked up. It's a good thing he let the leader of the main opposition to him live, or the final battle would have been a lot harder for Scott. Kang wants to take his empire with him, and part of that is taking his fortress that has the jail cells in it. Why did he let her live? There is no benefits, and he clearly has no qualms about killing people. After Cassie breaks Gintaria out, they head to the broadcast room, and Cassie uses it to send out a message claiming Kang is not invisible, which he does not know. If he's in the suit, he seems to be pretty invincible at this point at least. Cassie is not at all convincing or inspiring, but the call still works, reminding me of a certain moment. The final battle starts, and it isn't really that eventful. MODOK gets beaten by Cassie and becomes really pathetic. Here's the conversation that occurs between the two of them.
Let's go! You think this is over? Come on, let's go!
Aaron, stop! I'm trying to be whatever this is.
I don't know what to be. Tell me what to be.
I don't know, just don't be a dick.
It's too late. Look at me. I'm such a dick.
Cassie, Hope, and Scott show up to fight Kang. Why doesn't Kang just take his ship if the fortress isn't ready? After they fight for a bit, Hank shows up with the Rick and Morty ants, and Kang gets swarmed. The Avengers level threat got swarmed by ants. The man who is the follow-up to Thanos got swarmed by ants. The man who has transcended time itself got swarmed by ants and screamed as they washed over him. MODOK is lying there dying, and it gets played for laughs. It sucks to see him surrounded by people who he thinks cares about him, mock him as he dies, and lie to him. The Ant Family, I think that's what the group of them is called, open a portal and all of them jump through except for Scott, who then gets attacked by Kang. It's pretty cool to see Scott and Kang duke it out, but once Kang wins, he runs into the portal and gets knocked back by Hope. Now, I played a little bit of football, and having been in Hope's position multiple times, unless she used her powers really fast and then grew back really fast, she would have been knocked back easily just off the size difference.
Momentum, right? Jump, tap, right? One move.
Scott throws particles into the core, and Kang gets sucked in, screaming, again. I find it odd that Cassie uses the telescope to bring Scott and Hope back to Earth, but the telescope was only meant to look into the quantum realm and only opened a portal as a malfunction. This makes no sense, but whatever. Scott questions if they really won, and I like how they did that to set up future stuff. It sucks that Kang's threat level was undercut in the way it was. It just feels off. Why is this called Ant-Man and the Wasp? Hope only really did one thing in the movie, and even that didn't make much sense. I have no idea why the writers did the Starkiller based thing to the stakes of the MCU. Now it's not just half a universe, or even a whole universe at stake. It's the multiverse at stake. When you ballpark things like this, it cheapens the emotional impact of an ending, and it weakens interconnected stories like this. Why care about some villains running around free over here if the multiverse itself is in danger over here? At some point you can't biggie size the stakes anymore and you hit a wall. Thankfully you can't go much bigger than the multiverse in a story, so this might show that Marvel is bringing the MCU to a close. I'm just kidding. They're gonna keep these coming until the wheels fall off and the car explodes. Michelle Pfeiffer and Jonathan Majors killed it here, and I think that they were the standout points. Paul Rudd did a good job too, but I feel like leads in superhero movies tend to be overshadowed by their roles, sort of in the way that Anthony Mackie said, and I'm paraphrasing here, is you don't go to watch a Chris Evans movie, you go to watch a Captain America movie. The superhero name is the draw. Paul also apparently wrote a script focused around AIM and MODOK. I wish that is what we got. Instead we got a villain that would fit right into Shark Boy and Lava Girl. Speaking of underwhelming villains, Kang has lost all impact. He has lost twice already, once here and once in Loki. Now we're supposed to fear him? I'm not expecting another Thanos level villain. All I expect of the MCU when it comes to Kang is something like Breaking Bad and El Camino. El Camino is unnecessary, just like every MCU movie post Endgame. Yes, even this one. But it manages to stay at Breaking Bad's quality level and is a great ending for an amazing character. Kang has already gotten dropped like a fly on multiple occasions and doesn't have any type of intimidation factor to him. I have no doubt that Jonathan Majors will give another great performance in the Kang Dynasty movie, but it will be wasted on bad writing. I think that they are trying to build towards a reveal that the Kangs who were killed were the good guys, quote unquote, and they were the only ones stopping the bad Kangs. It's really too bad that they had to sacrifice the stakes for that, because I think that reveal was pretty good on paper. All in all, if you view the MCU as just a bunch of dumb superhero movies, then this won't bother you. I can appreciate the movie on a surface level, but as soon as you think about the plot and how it all fits together, it completely falls apart. At least they avoided the why didn't they call the Avengers in criticism.